opening arguments. Senators weighed the case against former President Donald Trump. Coronavirus pandemic, how the Biden administration is trying to make it easier for you to get vaccinated. Tracking COVID-19, where investigators are seeking the source of the deadly virus. And faith in action, how a community in Lourdes is caring for the sick. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Former President Donald Trump is said to be beyond angry about his defense team's performance yesterday as the Senate voted to move forward on his second impeachment trial. Today, testimony continued from both sides. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric?
Well, Tracy, day one was all about the constitutionality of the trial and senators' jurisdictions. But after 6 Republican senators broke ranks and voted with Democrats to go ahead with the trial, impeachment managers then spelled out the reasons why they believe former President Donald Trump, now private citizen, should be impeached.
The managers for the House of Representatives have 16 hours.
The second impeachment trial of Donald Trump opening with an emotional appeal from lead impeachment manager Jamie Raskin to impeach the former president.
You will see during this trial a man who praised and encouraged and cultivated violence. We have just begun to fight, he says, more than a month after the election has taken place.
The Trump defense team continues to accuse the Democrats of political games.
We are really here because the majority in the House of Representatives does not want to face Donald Trump as a political rival in the future.
Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, one of 5 Republicans who voted to move forward with the impeachment trial.
I said I'd be an impartial juror. Anyone listening to those arguments, the House managers were focused, they were organized, they relied upon both precedent, the Constitution, and legal scholars.
Other Republicans I spoke with say nothing surprised them on day one, and so far they are not swayed on day 2.
I think their motivation is to get rid of Trump and just make sure he isn't going to be some threat for the future. And that didn't change yesterday.
Democrats say President Trump must be held accountable, and the impeachment hearing will give an accurate record for history.
40% of the loyalists to President Trump dispute the very basic reality that this was a mob inspired by him to come here and literally engage in violent and murderous conduct.
The 9 Democratic impeachment managers have 16 hours to present their case. Then President Trump's attorneys will have 16 hours to present their case, then 4 hours from questions from senators and another 4 for closing arguments. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
And coming up later in the newscast, we hear from John Malcolm of the Heritage Foundation and get his analysis of the legal arguments in the impeachment case. President Joe Biden goes before cameras this afternoon to discuss the situation in Burma, also known as Myanmar, where a military coup recently took place. The Biden administration also says now is not the time to roll back mask mandates. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Tonight, President Joe Biden is calling for an immediate return to democracy for Burma. He's imposing sanctions on that nation's military to cut off their money. He's warning against violence, and he says tonight the world is watching.
President Joe Biden addresses the situation in Burma.
The assault on Burma's transition to democracy remains an issue of deep bipartisan concern.
Democracy! Democracy!
Thousands of people flooding the streets there today, the country's 5th straight day of protests against the military coup.
Today, I again call on the Burmese military to immediately release the democratic political leaders and activists.
President Biden is also pushing his financial relief proposal back here at home. Press Secretary Jen Psaki says it's paramount to provide immediate help to the American people.
The president also raised his priority to increase wages and ensure no one who makes minimum wage is living below the poverty line.
Meanwhile, the White House COVID-19 response team urges Americans to keep wearing masks, especially with concerns over new virus variants.
The science is clear. Everyone needs to be wearing a mask when they are in public or when they are in their own home, but with people who do not live in their household.
And when it comes to masks?
We continue to recommend that masks should have 2 or more layers.
And Dr. Anthony Fauci noted this about thousands of pregnant women who have taken the vaccine.
Approximately 20,000 pregnant women have been vaccinated with no red flags, as we say, and this is being monitored by the CDC and the FDA.
Also tonight, the White House COVID-19 response team is announcing 3 new mass vaccination sites in Texas. That's Dallas, Arlington, and Houston. As many as 10,000 people will be able to get vaccinated as the country races to get shots in arms. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Hong Kong's highest court denied bail yesterday to a Catholic pro-democracy advocate. Media tycoon Jimmy Lai was arrested last summer for apparently breaking a new China-imposed national security law. His trial is expected to begin in April. The World Health Organization believes it's likely that COVID-19 originated in an animal, but they can't say which type.
It has not been possible to pinpoint any animal species as a potential reservoir for this disease.
Investigators from the WHO traveled to China to try to pinpoint the source of the coronavirus pandemic. They say it is extremely unlikely to have leaked from a Chinese lab. The visit was politically sensitive for China, which is concerned about allegations it mishandled the outbreak. Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, joins me now on Skype for more on this story. Gordon, welcome back. Always great to speak with you. So what do you make of these findings? Do you think it closes the door on some of the earlier theories about the origins of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I don't think the WHO mission closed the door on anything. They said, of course, that the lab leak theory was extremely unlikely, but I don't know how they know. I mean, the WHO mission spent a grand total of 3.5 hours at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the facility in question. And this was after a year ago when China's top biological weapons expert, General Chen Wei, when she took over the P4 lab at the Wuhan Institute. And I think she probably cleaned it up. She removed any trace of lab leak, and she probably removed any evidence of a biological weapons program. So I don't know how the WHO could have come to that conclusion. This is still unspecified, so I don't think that they should be eliminating major causes that clearly could be the case.
Yeah, and as we know, this obviously has political implications, this investigation. And speaking about the WHO's finding, a State Department spokesman basically said that the U.S. still needs to look into that report. What do you make of that? And what do you think the balancing act the Biden administration has to manage on this?
Well, for the Biden administration, of course, this will be intensely political as well. But we've got additional considerations in this country because China took steps to deliberately send this disease beyond China's borders. And that means that there's a political consensus in the U.S. that something must be done. Obviously, Biden doesn't want to anger Beijing, but we need to do that because we've got to establish deterrence, because this is not the last pathogen that will come from Chinese soil. And we can't allow Chinese leader Xi Jinping to think that he can act so irresponsibly and so murderously again.
Gordon, what areas do you think require more investigation into this?
Well, first of all, I think that clearly the origin. There are a lot of possibilities still out there, including a lab leak. And in this regard, the U.S. intelligence community can play a role because we do have a lot of information about this disease. Now, at the end of the Trump administration, on a couple of occasions, we learned a little bit about what the U.S. intel community thought. And this is up to really President Biden to release this because he can do so. This is a matter of grave national concern. We're talking about 460,000 American dead right now. We should be learning of what's going on, and we have some of that information.
Gordon, what do you think happens next? What would you like to see happen next?
Well, what will happen next is the WHO will issue a final report, and I'm sure China will have a hand in drafting that, as it's had a hand in drafting other WHO reports on the coronavirus. But I think that in the United States, there's going to be intensified discussion about this because of what China did and the way that it acted in sending this disease beyond its borders. So I think that this is going to be a matter of controversy for quite some time, as it should.
And Gordon, before I let you go, we don't have a lot of time left, but final thoughts on this and other activities coming out of China.
Well, China right now is acting in a very dangerous manner. I mean, there's been another incursion into Indian-controlled territory, this time in Sikkim. That is in addition to other incursions into India. And then, of course, Chinese moves against Taiwan, planes moving into its air defense identification zone, China practicing runs against Theodore Roosevelt's strike group in the South China Sea, China moving against Japan, going into its territorial waters. This is a consequential time where we need to deter China because it looks like Beijing wants to provoke something.
Yeah, all very concerning. Gordon Chang, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate your analysis.
Thank you, Tracy.
Officials in Berlin, Germany have begun to give out the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine. The first doses were mainly reserved for nurses and medical staff. The infection rates in Germany are gradually declining. Lawmakers have said they will open schools and child care facilities as the first priority. In Russia, several regions are now lifting coronavirus restrictions.
Выдавались кредиты на невысоких процентных ставках, плюс была поддержка по...
In one area, theaters are filled to 50% capacity and bars and restaurants can stay open until 11 p.m. In Moscow, employers are no longer required to have 30% of their staff working from home. The head of the Diocese of Colombo in Sri Lanka is seeking access to a report on the deadly Easter Sunday bombings in 2019. Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith has written to the country's president asking to see the results of the probe, which have not yet been made public. The strike killed more than 260 people and targeted 2 Catholic churches. 2 local Muslim groups affiliated with ISIS were blamed for the attacks. The Vatican has accepted the resignation of a bishop in Switzerland who called for a council to discuss ordaining women as priests. Bishop Dennis Turilia was an auxiliary bishop from the Diocese of Basel. The country's bishops' conference says it was surprised by the announcement and thanked him for 20 years of service. Coming up, abortion ban, where state lawmakers are considering new protections for unborn babies. And impeachment trial. John Malcolm from the Heritage Foundation offers his perspective. Lawmakers in South Carolina are considering a ban on most abortions. The state Senate and House committee already approved the measure. It would ban abortions as soon as the unborn baby's heartbeat is detected on an ultrasound. There are exceptions for rape and incest or if the mother's life is in danger. And we have more now on the first full day of arguments in the second impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump. John Malcolm, Vice President of the Institute for Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation, joins me now on Skype with his analysis of what we have seen and heard so far. John, welcome back. Always great to have you on. I want to talk about today's proceedings, but first, I want to get your view on the constitutionality of these proceedings impeaching a former president who's no longer in office.
Yeah, well, it's a close question, and there are esteemed scholars on both sides of this issue. I happen to think that the better argument is that it is unconstitutional. Impeachment and conviction is a remedy that is available for presidents, vice presidents, and all other civil officers of the United States. Donald Trump is none of those things. He is now a private citizen. At the time of our founding, England clearly would have impeachment proceedings for former officials. 5 of the 13 colonies had impeachment proceedings for former officials. The framers could have explicitly included that in the Constitution, but didn't. But as I say, there are arguments on the other side. It's a close question. And either way, that argument was rejected by 56 senators, and the trial is now proceeding.
Jen, I'd also like to get your impressions on the evidence laid out so far. First, from the Democrats serving as impeachment managers. They've shown really quite a bit of video from the insurrection on January 6th and leading up to it. How effective do you think that's been?
Look, I think they're doing a really good job, and I didn't think that President Trump's lawyers particularly did a great job yesterday. They are poised, they are articulate, they have prepared, they have a sort of a plan that they have laid out. They are making, very strong arguments interspersed with tweets and video clips to show that a lot of President Trump's supporters way back had resorted to violence, and they were certainly energized by the president's claims that there was a stolen election and that they needed to fight for the country. And what they are trying to suggest is that the president knew of their violent proclivities all along, did nothing to stop it, if anything, encouraged it, and knew that when they showed up on the mall on January 6th, that a lot of them were coming with weapons and stealing for a fight. And he, again, not only did nothing to stop it, but if anything, stirred them up. That's the argument they are trying to make. And we will hear what the president's lawyers have to say. But I must say, I'm not sure whether they're convincing any people who are wavering on that issue, but they're doing an effective job. And one thing they're doing really well that I think is very clever on their part is they are highlighting the attacks that President Trump made on Republicans who were on the fence as to what to do, what he referred to as rhinos, Republicans in name only. So the managers are going after those Republicans who might be inclined to acquit the president, but who don't like a lot of what the president said and did.
Let's talk about the defense attorneys. You had mentioned you thought they really didn't do that great of a job. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there are three attorneys on the team. Two of them spoke yesterday, the leads. One of them is Bruce Castro, a lawyer from Philadelphia, and the other is David Schoen from Georgia. I don't think that Bruce Castro was effective. He kind of rambled. He spoke for about 47, 48 minutes. At times, you were going, what's the point? What point is he trying to make? And I really had a hard time discerning what point he was trying to make, other than to say that political speech can sometimes be harsh and we should not try to ever stifle political speech. But I don't think he was particularly effective at it. We'll see how he does when the defense team starts putting on their trial. I thought that Mr. Schoen was more effective. He was clear as to what it was he was trying to do. He was very passionate, he made a strategic decision to attack this impeachment as being very partisan based by a lot of Democrats who were very angry at Donald Trump. I think that was a very fine strategy for the first impeachment trial. I'm not sure it's such a good strategy for this impeachment trial because there are Republicans who are clearly mad at what the president has done, and they were all there in the Capitol on January the 6th. So I think they view the facts a little bit differently. I would have, not shown such righteous indignation, but that's a strategic decision. We'll see how that plays out.
All right, John, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today. We do appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Up next, Lourdes Community. See how one group is helping the sick in the spirit of fraternal love. And birthday celebration. One religious sister's claim to fame and her secret to living a long life. Pope Francis says it is through prayer that we find life.
E la preghiera si dà nell'oggi. Gesù ci viene incontro oggi.
At his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says prayer is a reminder to give every minute of our lives to God. Every joy becomes a reason for praise, and every trial is a reminder to ask for help. Pope Francis also says real prayer is from the heart. It does not need to contain words and can be said anytime. An ancient book sacred to Iraqi Christians was presented today to Pope Francis. The 14th or 15th century manuscript belongs to a church in the Nineveh plain and was nearly destroyed by ISIS. It was saved, and now the Holy Father will return it to Iraq in his next visit next month. Well, tomorrow is the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes. It is also the World Day of the Sick. Pope Francis has released a message calling for the faithful to care for the sick and the neglected. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Holdren brings us to Lourdes, where one community is doing just that.
The Cenacolo Community was founded in 1983 in Cuneo, in northern Italy, by Mother Elvira. It focuses on serving lost youth and helping them to overcome dependencies and addictions. Last August, we joined the Diocese of Rome on its annual pilgrimage to Lourdes and witnessed the apostolate firsthand.
Like a lot of days, I feel I'm so convinced of my...
This is Patrick, one of the community's residents.
I'm 26 years old, I'm Portuguese, and I'm in this community house here in Lourdes since 3.5 years. So basically, I entered here, I was a drug addict. I had a lot of problems with the addictions, also with drug, cannabis, and alcohol. So since I entered here, I really feel like I started a new life.
The name of the community house is the Virgin of Divine Providence, and they currently host 36 people from many nationalities: Portuguese, Italians, French, Poles, Croatians, the list goes on.
So the community proposes a very simple walk of 3 years. Very simple in that sense, that after 3 years, the community says you're ready to go out and go back to the world and to normal life.
The founder of the Cenacolo Community, Mother Elvira Petrozzi, always believed in divine providence, and every community house lives by that rule, to provide food, money, everything.
We trust the providence, and the providence arrives.
Their everyday life is very simple and is guided by priests, nuns, and volunteers of the community. They start their day with praying the rosary in the morning and then get to work in the garden, the stable, or the kitchen. Then they have a lunch break, free time to share, and go back to work until dinner. Patrick entered the community with little faith. He had all the sacraments growing up but never prayed. But after seeing the other men pray alongside him, his faith journey finally began.
I just want to say I'm very lucky to be in this community. I think Community Cenacolo completely changed my life, just of the fact that I just live a simple life every day. So it touches the fact that I don't have to be nobody else than myself. That this was a thing that I never could be outside in the world. So I really appreciate my life thanks to the Community Cenacolo.
Rome's pilgrimage office, Opera Romana Pellegrinaggi, agreed with the community that every pilgrimage group that visits Lourdes from now on will also visit the Cenacolo community. In Rome, Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Nostra Signora di Lourdes, prega per noi. Santa Bernadette, prega per noi.
Wonderful story. And finally tonight, our religious community in France is celebrating the birthday of one of its members, and it's not just any birthday. Tomorrow, Sister Andre Radon is turning 117 years old, and last month, she was actually diagnosed with the coronavirus, and she survived. A convert to the faith, Sister Andre joined the Daughters of Charity at the age of 40, and now she is believed to be the second oldest living person in the world. She credits her longevity to prayer and a daily cup of hot chocolate. Incredible, and happy birthday to her. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.